Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team. Join us on social media at Consumer Legal Hour. Consumer Legal Hour is a community talk show, not intended to give legal advice. If you need legal advice, consult a lawyer in your state.
Thank you for joining us live this evening on Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team, Justina Winfrey, John Carter, and attorney Tanya McClary. We do have Sister Elaina Porter on with us, and we will have Shantell Lumpkins on shortly. Thank you for joining us, Sister Elaina. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you. Can you give us some background on the work that you currently do as a human rights defender?
Yes. Well, my background began
Speak up a little bit for me.
Okay. Well, my background begins with Indigenous studies. I cut my teeth on reparations a few years, I believe maybe 5 years ago. And I was studying reparations cases and looking at some of the pitfalls of the reasons why we were never successful in obtaining restorative and reparative justice here in the United States. And I found that there was a lot of international laws that could have been asserted to skirt around some of the domestic barriers that we encounter when we try to get reparations here or any type of restorative justice here in the United States. And I found that our point of entry was before 1619, and that gives us an indigenous status. That means that we were here before the United States was constituted. In international law, that has a legal and a political connotation, where we're not a simple minority. We are indigenous to this land. Therefore, we have certain land rights, property rights, the right to self-govern, the right to self-police. So that's pretty much where my journey began in studying international and human rights law.
And currently, I do understand that you are a part of a particular group that just rolled out, along with the group that is currently working with the United Nations.
Yes, I am. Yes. Currently, I am part of the Pendle Center for Human Rights and Self-Determination. We are a group who teaches international and human rights law as it applies to U.S. Afro-descendants. Also, I am one of the co-facilitators of the African Descendant Nation that was declared here in the United States in 2017. And also, we have declared national liberation status. And national liberation status is a international legal political vehicle that colonized peoples use to obtain their human rights when there are no remedies domestically. We have our status has been ambiguous since 1865. There's a lot of dynamics that comes into play when you take in consideration of the conditions that Afro descendants here in the United States suffer in terms of the historical and current violence, the intergenerational poverty, the unequal share in the wealth, the nation's wealth and resources. It's just so much that can be remedied by the political configurations that we're utilizing and the new legal and political vehicles that we're utilizing. We're 48, I think the population is almost 48 million. And that's a nation. That's a nation within the nation. We're not poor. We just don't control our wealth, our human capital, our labor. We don't control our spaces. We don't have a political apparatus that answers to us and answers to us first. Therefore, we created those apparatuses. And with that being said, I am a part of, a new way of advocating for ourselves using different legal and political tools.
Thank you. So for people who are interested in learning more information about the Pendo Center, can you please give them information on the show now?
Yes. If you would like to check us out, you
Forgive
can
me,
go
Sister
to
Elaina.
Pendo.
Can you speak up just a little more or turn your volume up?
Okay, let me.
Thank you.
I didn't realize how low I'm really speaking. Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Can you hear me better now? Okay. The website is pendo4freedom.org. Pendo, the number 4, freedom.org.
Wonderful. Which brings us up to speed with the current situation regarding Grandmaster Jay and the right to bear arms in the United States and the unfortunate situation that has recently occurred. Can you give us some information about that?
Well, I can't speak on the criminal charges itself. However, I will address the issue from a international and human rights law perspective, and from my personal experience interacting with Grandmaster Jay and interacting with NFAC. Grandmaster Jay carries NFAC very professionally. And what really intrigued me and what really made me respect the organization is that he really stressed the importance of knowing the law, obeying the law when it comes to the use of firearms, and also being safe. He focused on safety as well. I think he inspired a lot of working class African Americans who really felt unsafe and felt the need to do something about the police violence here. The police violence here is in some areas, especially in the South. There's different sundown towns. And for example, he addressed the Ahmaud Arbery case. That's not the only incident that has happened in the South. There are several incidents that has occurred similar. to the Aubrey case. So, you know, he really went to the very soul of most working class Black people who were concerned for their safety. I witnessed people from the root to the fruit. All of our people are involved and wanted to arm themselves and protect their families. The last 4 years, the races have become more bold. They've become emboldened. And it's not just the average racist. I mean, it's systemic and it's embedded in our law enforcement. And whether we like it or not, we had to face it. So what do? Do we sit idly by and be picked off like sitting ducks? Or do we exercise our rights under the under the Second Amendment? And, you know, a lot of African Americans felt that and feel that is something that we need to do. Also, we suffer from internal violence due to the poverty, due to our oppression and our condition. We don't control anything. We don't control the means of production. We don't control the institutions that we depend on. We don't have a way we're not self-sufficient. And due to the political status that we're in, if we're going to close these wealth gaps and if we're going to curb the internal violence, we're going to have to put in the institutions in our communities and in our settlements and in our areas where we're the majority population. We're going to have to take control. The policing that is currently used in our neighborhoods in where we're the majority population is a retributive type policing, where we need a restorative justice type policing. And when I say that, most of our crimes are economic based. You know, when somebody snatches somebody's pocketbook, it's not because they really want to, it's because of lack of resources. Now, we do have those who just do that for sport. But most of the time, most of the crimes that's committed when we commit it against each other is because of lack of resources. It's because of the intergenerational poverty. So the policing that's used, it's not taking that into consideration. So at this point, you know, when I see a well-organized militia like NFAC, I see an opportunity for us to self-police. And it's not just about policing, it's not just about having guns. It's not just about chasing the bad guy, you know, or attacking the bad guy. Policing is about securing, protecting, and defending. And there's another humanitarian side of policing as well. I see, in fact, is, once they, incorporate the international standards where the use of force is proportional to the crime. And a lot of times when law enforcement encounter Afro-descendants, the use of force is very excessive. So we have a right to self-police once we perfect our political configuration that allows us control. I see, in fact, as a valuable and an asset to U.S. Afro-descendants here in the United States. And with that, I yield the floor.
Thank you for joining us this evening, Shantell Lumpkins, CEO of Above All Security Solutions. Shantell Lumpkins is a veteran and trains people in our community on firearms safety and how to obtain their firearms, not just their FOI card, but their certification to actually conceal and carry. Thank you for joining us, Shantell.
Yes, thanks for having me. Good evening.
So with COVID, I'm sure it has impacted your business in some way or another. And the one conversation, don't go too far, Sister Elaina, because with Sister
I'm
Shantell,
still here.
okay, on the line, we want to ensure that everyone within the network, especially the fact that there are far and few Black-owned conceal and carry trainers, especially in Illinois. So, can you elaborate for us this evening and give us some background about how your business has sustained itself COVID-19?
Um, a major way how my business has sustained itself is by hosting virtual classes. So I had to think of a way to stay afloat to avoid from becoming extinct or non-existent, so that my services to young people or people like myself or maybe even older people in my area, so that they'll still be able to protect themselves and know the proper ways to do so. I've decided to host virtual concealed carry classes. We still have the proper 16 hours that the state allows. I use the curriculum that the state approved curriculum that's under my certification number. And then the next day, day 2, we go to the range. We follow up on everything that we have learned virtually. I answer any questions that they may have. And I've actually seen sometimes I may have a rise, and then again it's a decline again. So it's that kind of business where it's almost like a seasonal thing, but that's how I've been able to stay on the map by offering virtual classes, since that's like the new thing to do now.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
typically, how long is it taking for people to obtain their conceal and carry certification now?
Prior to COVID, we always have to compare, because there was a day prior to COVID. It would take about up to 120 days, and that's without receiving the fingerprint. So that's 30, 60, 90, 120. That's 4 months. Now, post-COVID, it's taken some people 6 months. It's taken some people longer. I've had a young lady, she took my class in early December. She just texted me like 2 weeks ago, right before February started, that she received her license already. So I don't know if they've had a pickup or they're just deciding. I don't know how they're deciding how to approve people. I'm just telling people now it's best to get it in and just wait. You may get it one day in the mail, surprisingly. So that's the information that I can give. There's not really much leads from the state. We don't really have a contact to see how long it's taken to process. It's just the matter of, I guess, them getting to your application, because they did have a shortage in staff as well. So.
Okay. So with the current situation, we wanted to just discuss the way that the Second Amendment impacts, and I know you're not able to speak from a legal perspective. And again, we don't give legal advice on Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team. If you need legal advice in your, you need to seek a lawyer in your state. So with that said, regarding the Second Amendment right to bear arms and the fact that Illinois in particular is a conceal and carry state, have there been concerns regarding Black people that you trained carrying arms? And you've gone through the process of military academy in high school and then straight into the service. So you do have an abundance of experience as a Black woman and veteran.
Yes. As far as the people that I've specifically trained in my class, I've had no incidents. I've had a 100% pass rate. I've even, from teaching concealed carry classes, taken upon myself to form a gun club. It's called the Millennial Gun Club. It's not just for millennials, it's just formed by millennials, so that everyone that I've touched or spoken to or I've taught in my class, they can continue their hobby by learning how to practice safety and doing things more often, getting that muscle memory that we always talk about, so that when it's time to protect yourself and others, you know how to do so, you know what to do, you know the protocols to take, what insurance card to have, and things like that. So I go further beyond my concealed carry classes with my training, so that everyone can stay abreast, and just so that they can be the sharpest knife in the tool shed when need be.
So, are you familiar with the situation with Grandmaster Jay? Because it has been in the news lately.
I am not familiar with that.
Okay, so can you briefly, without getting into the case situation, Sister Elaina?
Well, basically, what happened, Jay was, I believe he allegedly pointed a gun up towards one of the high-rise buildings in Kentucky. From just based off of what I've read, to me is basically a sham charge. You know, they waited over 3 months to address the issue. If he was really a threat, we know they've killed Black people for way less. So I think it's politically motivated, mean-spirited, because Grandmaster Jay uncovered complicity with the Kentucky state government in the cover-up of the murder of Breonna Taylor. Also, he uncovered complicity in South Georgia in the Ahmaud Arbery case. So this is politically charged, it's politically motivated, it's racially motivated. The white militias have done way, way more atrocities than Grandmaster Jay could ever dream of. And again, just some of the things that I'm seeing on social media, it's almost like a modern day witch hunt. That's my position, my personal position. I'm not an attorney. I'm just a human rights defender. You know, I'm just calling a spade from my perspective. It's in my opinion, it's a sham. The crimes, the uptick since within the last 4 years, the boldness of the racism, the boldness of the police killings, it has escalated. The numbers actually increased over the last 4 years, and it's just awful. You know, the way that our people can just be murdered by the police. Nothing is done. It can be covered up at any time. So we had a person that came in, investigated, uncovered some things, and it just didn't jive well with the government. And that's at the end of the day, that's what happened. I think if he posed a threat that day, he wouldn't have walked out of Kentucky. Why did it take 3 months to arrest him? It's questionable at the end of the day. These are things that the United States do. Anytime that we stand up for ourselves and we assert our rights and we assert our humanity, we find ourselves hunted down. We saw it with Malcolm. We saw it with Martin Luther King. We see it with anyone who stands up. They're hunted down. Their characters assassinated. Some of the things that's on social media, I know for a fact that's not true. It's business as usual, but we can change it as a people. We can change these things. Number one, we have a right to self-govern. That's fact. Our point of entry was way before 1619. That gives us the same status where we were supposed to have been treated in the same manner as the Native Americans. As a matter of fact, we were treated in the same manner as the Native Americans. But all of those gains and all of those protections that were afforded to our ancestors after slavery, when Abraham Lincoln died and the racists gained power back in the White House, they pulled the federal troops out. They pulled all of the federal protections that were given to our ancestors. They took them back. And they re-enslaved our population using the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, specifically the 13th Amendment, with that exception in the 13th Amendment. So with that being said, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of internal conversations that we need to have concerning our identity, changing our political status and our political form and our political relationship with the United States. And it's not about saying that we are separatists. No, we're not separatists. What we're saying is we're transferring authority where it should have been in the first place back to us. We're recapturing our displaced sovereignty. Whether our ancestors were enslaved on the continent of Africa or whether they were enslaved here, their sovereignty was displaced. They never gave it up, nor should we. And with that, I yield the floor.
I hear you.
And that's fact. We have a right to self-govern. We have a right to self-police. We can alleviate, if you want to alleviate police brutality, then we're going to have to police ourselves. We have enough young veterans like Shantell. We have enough ex-veterans like Brother Jay and other brothers in the Black Panther Party. They could be getting those contracts. There's some areas, do you know that there are some areas where the police stations are empty? They get money every month to have these buildings open and have police in them, but half of the time the police are not even there. Just buildings just sitting there. Tax dollars just going to waste. Our militias could have those contracts. You have areas in housing projects where the police won't even go into. But you're still, tax dollars are still going towards that police department. But that section of the city is not being policed. Why can't our militia have those contracts and police our people? Why can't that happen? Why can't we set up our own community-based policing? Why can we not have our own police, our own militias? Okay? Have our own law enforcement.
Right.
Under international law, we can do that. Under the decolonization conventions and under the Fourth Geneva Conventions, we're what you call a special population as a colonized people. We can self-police. We can self-govern. We have to be open to looking at alternatives if we're going to survive within the next few years. From what I understand in my studies, the way I look at things with us as a population, we're in genocidal conditions because we don't control certain aspects, the most important aspect of our lives. We should control our own healthcare system. We should control our own schools, our own family and children's services, programs and different policies. We should set our own policies. So, within the next few years, these are some things that we really, really need to be looking at. These are the conversations that we need to be having, not just about, are we going to vote Democrat or Republican? We need to be in a position where we're going to survive regardless of who is in the White House.
Just to jump in, and
when we look at the external violence, the police killing us, and when we look at the internal violence,
can you all hear me okay? Okay, so just to jump in and point out the recent hearings that the United Nations held, okay? Mm-hmm. The United Nations held hearings around the the recent the police brutality that has occurred throughout the United States. But just to take a step back for a second, we need to still touch on the Grandmaster Jay, the petition that's being circulated right now to the judge, and I'd like to share that information online. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce Markis Miranda, a Marine vet and Black-owned business owner in Illinois, one of the only, it is a blessing to have one of the two Black-owned conceal and carry owners on the call this evening. Thank you both for being on the call. This is Sister Shantell Lumpkins. Brother Markis Miranda is owner of P6 Firearms and Training.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Speak up for us a little bit.
Oh, I'm too low. Let me see if I can change that. Let's see. Can you hear me now? No.
Yes.
Okay, good.
But if you project your voice a little more, we'll hear you even better.
All right. So I was saying it was an honor and a pleasure to be invited. Is that better?
Not really. But that's okay. We'll work with it.
Okay, I gotta see what's going on with that.
So, owner of P6 Training, Firearms and Training. What do you do as a trainer?
So I'm a personal protection instructor. I educate people on the proper use of firearms, proper choices in firearms, and understand the laws involved with using a firearm.
Wonderful. Can you give us a little bit of your background in firearms use and how long you've been an instructor and what you did in the military?
So my history is I'm a former active duty Marine. I served from 99 to 07. One or two tours in Iraq. Firearm usage wasn't prevalent in my life until I joined the military. So when I joined, I was 17. When I enlisted, I was 17. When I joined, I was 18. First time using a firearm was military. I helped people when they did their qualifications, when it came to the rifle, when I was in the military. And when I got out, about 2 years after I got out, I started my own company with teaching people firearm safety and how to actually shoot a firearm properly. One of the misconceptions was, there's a lot of instructors who teach concealed carry. The disadvantage is that what was the qualification that Illinois passed to allow instructors to be instructors for concealed carry? One of the things that Illinois did was they said, hey, you just have to be a basic pistol instructor to be able to teach. So I took that, but I went far beyond when it came to getting my instructorships. I went to different weapon platforms, more training, more certifications, more classes, and even got to the point where I'm an Illinois certified instructor, not just a concealed carry instructor. So there's a big difference because you can be a basic pistol instructor and teach concealed carry, but you can't be an Illinois concealed carry instructor and be registered with the state of Illinois.
So you can actually train the trainers. Understood. And there are firearms too.
And I also went ahead and took another step and I got law enforcement training credentials. So I can train security and law enforcement.
So let's talk about that because we had a brief conversation about that. And I asked the basic question, hey, how do you travel with the weapon on a plane?
So Travel with the weapon on a plane. All this is covered under TSA.gov, but what you're looking at is your firearm unloaded inside of a case that's lockable, and you can only carry up to 11 pounds of ammunition. So, depending on the type of firearm you carry, 11 pounds can be almost 500 bullets, depending on what you carry. So the reason why I'm saying that is that 1,000 rounds of 9mm, based on the grain, is roughly about 21, 22 pounds. Cut that in half, that's 10 to 11 pounds. But if you're traveling with that much ammo, you might be traveling to a state you shouldn't go to. So roughly, if you're talking about a concealed firearm, you're locking your firearm up, you're making sure it's unloaded. So what does unloaded mean? No magazine in the magazine well, nothing in the chamber. Some people take an extra step and they run a lock through the gun to make sure that it can't be loaded. That's a good step if you decide to take it. You can also use a trigger lock to cover the gun and lock it inside the case lock it into the case. Your gun and ammo can be in the same case. Everything can be in one bundle, one package. Some of the restrictions, your ammunition that you travel with has to be in the original box. That is one of the restrictions, but it's kind of a loose restriction if you leave it inside of a magazine. The next thing, and I do mean please take this into advisement. When you get to the airport, declare that you have a firearm. You don't just put it on the carousel and let it go. You have to go to the front desk, or excuse me, you have to go to the counter and declare that you are traveling with a firearm. They take your ID, they give you your ticket, they give you your boarding pass. You fill out a form that's a declaration form that says, I have a firearm and it's unloaded. You take that document, you put inside your case or your luggage, zip it up, and then they take it from there. So in O'Hare, what they do is they take you to the x-ray station and they let you watch your stuff get x-rayed. And then they take it to the plane. At Midway, they take you to a TSA area where they swab your bag for explosive material.
So with the situation that happened traveling with firearms and a lot of bullets, one of the questions that came up and the concern for you was ultimately, hey, how do you all make the determination that a person is carrying over 11 pounds of bullets through the airport?
Mm-hmm.
Which airport was this?
This was California San Jose Airport.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
San
right.
Jose. Yes, San Jose TSA. Lovely people.
Understood.
That's the word I'm going to use.
And that was ultimately the question. Where's the scale?
Mm-hmm.
And you were there training law enforcement, doing some form of training, correct?
Right.
With the proper credentials. Without getting into great detail, because I'm sure there's some levels of clearance that you can't really discuss.
So
Understood.
I was there during a training exercise with a group of law enforcement individuals, SWAT teams, and a great bunch of guys, and a lovely lady who was there who was an amazing hunter. Now, traveling with this much ammunition, yeah, it becomes problematic. But again, I had the credentials, had the paperwork, I had the class listing, I had the class requirements. I had everything with me.
So let's get to why they likely flagged you, although you had all of the proper credentials.
They flagged me because when they x-rayed the box all my guns and ammo was in, they said it didn't look like 11 pounds of ammo was inside the box. Now, let me be honest with you. One of my biggest pet peeves is assumptions. Unless you are one of those people that can guess weight by looking at something, you should never tell a person that, oh, you look like you're about 100 pounds. So to look at that box and think I had only or more than 11 pounds was insulting. And I addressed the situation by letting them know that if the box became open, there may be a lawsuit involved, because looking at something and not having a scale, that can be kind of problematic.
Well, yeah, and you could ultimately, you possibly could have been detained by the police as a result and in violation of a law, correct?
Yes.
As a person who used to work for TSA, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I know how they can kind of be not realistic all the time. Like you said, you hate for people to make assumptions. In that job, they should never make assumptions anyway. That's how we were trained. If it looks like whatever it looks like on the X-ray machine, I'm pretty sure it looked like it was a tip. A tip is a threat image projection. So and if it's like a fake image, they use fake images to pop up to see if we're paying attention on the X-ray machine. We're supposed to hit a certain button to clear it to let the system know that we caught it, right? So if they hit that button and it doesn't go away, it's an actual threat. So you have to pull the bag and inspect it. You can't say, oh, well, I think it looks like, or well, no, if it looks like a water bottle, you want to check to see if it's a water bottle. It could be 2 apples put together, or however it's placed in the bag. I'm sorry, that's my children in the background. They're running around and playing with the dog. But so yeah, I can understand how you feel about that. I mean, that's kind of, there really was no excuse for that. But, and what was the airport?
San Jose.
Okay.
So segueing right into the discussion with Sister Elaina, I pray she hasn't gone too far. And the current situation with Brother Grandmaster Jay, and I understand she can't speak directly to the situation with the charges, but I did want to share this briefly with everyone. And this is the letter and petition on change.org, and it's to the United States Supreme Court for John Fitzgerald Johnson, and it's regarding a character reference. And there are nearly 1,000 signatures, and it's to the Honorable Judge Regina S. Edwards. And it looks like, according to the change.org petition, in the complaint, Johnson was charged in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 11, assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers or employees. Now, Sister Elaina had briefly mentioned that Brother Johnson has been charged. Well, she didn't say charged, that he was arrested for allegedly pointing a weapon at a building that an officer, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct, Sister Elaina?
Yes. He allegedly pointed his rifle. He had a scope or a light on that particular weapon at some officers that were on a rooftop. The intriguing thing to me was that if it was a threat or he had broken a law, why did it take so long for them to address that issue if he indeed posed a threat and if he indeed broke a law, specifically one where he threatened law enforcement? Number two, Another question that arises, just to me, I'm like I said, I don't deal with the criminal aspect of the issue. But another question that I do have is, because the brother does go when he have those formations, before he goes into any city, he has a point of contact with law enforcement. He does collaborate with the different entities. If there's permits needed, he did go through and touch bases with those entities to get permits or whatever have you. So my question is, was he briefed that a SWAT team or that particular law enforcement would be on top of that building, whether or not they posed a threat? So there's a lot of dynamics here that comes into play. But the thing that sticks out to me like a sore thumb, and we know how our police system, our policing is here in the United States, that if he did pose a threat with that weapon, why did it take so long for them to address the issue? And with that, I yield the floor.
So I have to ask the question, between time of, let's say, time of threat and time of arrest, how much time had elapsed?
I think it was some months. I think that happened in July, maybe September. Like I said, I didn't keep up with the intricate details. But if he did indeed pose a threat, why wasn't he arrested that day? If it was a threat, it was a couple of weeks or some months when they came back and arrested him.
See, now my question becomes, did they build a case? Because ultimately, to arrest someone around an armed militia can be considered hard.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it's just like I said, my suspicions are. Right. Grandmaster Jay uncovered some very interesting information.
Ironically, I need to jump in real quick. Forgive me, Sister Elaina. Regarding the timeline, so that we're just clear on the timeline, it seems that the protest occurred in September. Officers with the FBI, Louisville Police, and Secret Service were watching demonstrators September 4 at Jefferson Square Park during a protest related to the killing of Breonna Taylor. The FBI said in a new release, a probable cause affidavit states that a Louisville Metro Police Department radio transmission told officers a group of, quote, 6 to 8 heavily armed individuals were near a parking garage. So this actually occurred in September, the first week of September, and he was arrested about 2 months later.
Yes.
In December.
Yes. So it seems to me that they were looking for something to build a case on, and it seems to me that it was some sort of retaliation based on some of the things that he uncovered, specifically with the Breonna Taylor case. That Breonna Taylor case is connected to gentrification. Also, that particular case reveals complicity. The state was complicit. All of the actors were complicit. Mayor's office, that case shows a lot of complicity. Also, the same thing happened in South Georgia. I think these charges are politically motivated. It's a political issue. Retaliation.
So real quick, it says police and task force officers went to the roof of the Jefferson County Grand Jury building to watch the people when some of the officers were blinded by a light according to the federal complaint. They determined the light was coming from a flashlight mounted to an AR platform-style rifle that Johnson was aiming at them. It alleges noting officers recognized Johnson after seeing him earlier in the day and previously in videos he posted on social media. The officers and TFOs advised they all perceived a threat from Johnson based on him aiming his rifle at them. The complaint reads, all officers advised they were concerned Johnson might intentionally or even accidentally discharge a round at them.
So with that type of literature, they can base that off past behavior. And when it comes to negligent discharges, that is prevalent based on that last protest where someone's firearm went off. The other side of that too is that there is a disconnect on the education on one of the explanations that was made when it came to negligent discharges and certain nomenclature when it comes to certain types of firearms. So they can base it off the I can honestly say, if a light is attached to a firearm, the only way you can see that light is if that firearm is pointing towards you. Okay, so for example, this is an unloaded firearm. Okay, it's empty. Everyone can see that it's empty, right? Yes?
Yes.
So if I turn on this light, what's the only way you can see it? So
You can see the light.
So
yes, go ahead and finish that point.
So because you can see the light on my firearm has to be pointing where?
Would it have taken 2 months for them to have seen the light?
Oh no.
If as a conceal and carry firearms training instructor, you can explain this to the public and clearly show us with the light attached to the weapon that the only way you can see the light is if it's pointed directly at you.
Mm-hmm.
We can clearly state that yes, that light is pointed directly at us and that we see that light right now at this moment. It wouldn't take us 2 months later to say, yes, Markis, we see the light.
Right.
So it makes me wonder if they have any video of the alleged light pointing now.
Right. So the thing is that, again, if they had to build a case based on the individual's behavior. So you guys are in the legal field, so you guys understand that when a case is built, it's not built just on incident. They look at incident and everything prior. So let's say, for example, you took the incident of the light shining or the gun. Sorry, can you hear me? So let's say you take the light shining and his past history based on his knowledge of firearms. He could be considered a threat because his lack of knowledge on firearms could have been an accidental discharge towards that officer. It's flimsy, but true.
Would it have taken them 2 months though? And I hear you keep saying they've had to build the case. But again, at the point of them having the light pointed at them, the police would have emerged on the group immediately.
Yes and no. And the reason why I say yes or no, yes and no to that, is because if it made more sense to wait till the group dispersed, then it's better to go that route than it is to go outnumbered into a group of people that's armed, not knowing what they're going to do.
There were only 5 to 8 of them.
Well, this is
the police force watching with officials from the rooftop. And they were fully aware that typically in situations like that, there are people on the rooftop, snipers, whatever, from different groups. They're clear on that.
Right.
And
so we're just kind of, throwing some things out, some different, since we don't know the details of the charges, we don't know the details of, we don't have the case file at this point. And unfortunately, Brother Jay is not able to speak to the situation right now because it could compromise his innocence.
And then there's a lot of unanswered questions. The time frame, and also what stays in the back of my mind is that he goes to, it's not a situation where he's just going into these areas, overwhelming these localities. He's going in and actually collaborating with law enforcement, with the setting up, where they're going to staging areas, where they're supposed to be, getting the proper permits. My question was, did he know they were going to be on top of that roof? That's one of the questions that's in the back of my mind. Like I said,
go ahead, Brother Markis, and then I'm going to jump in.
So the thing is this: when you look at some basic safety rules when it comes to having a firearm, one of the safety rules is keeping the gun pointed in a safe direction. That's one of the first safety rules. Keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. So my question to you is, if there are people that way looking on, is my gun pointed in a safe direction? So let's say an accident. There's no such thing as accidents when it comes to guns. It's negligence. There's no such thing as accidents. And the reason why I say that is because it takes the pulling of a trigger based on what the mind is telling the finger to do. That's why most people are taught, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Keep the gun pointed in a safe direction until you're ready to fire. So if my safe direction, I have people this way, I have to point my gun down. At any moment, my gun comes up, I'm no longer pointing in a safe direction if people are in front of my gun. So that's where those safety rules come into place. You can't be considered a threat if you don't do a threatening thing.
And I think that some of that may stem from a live video that went viral that Grandmaster Jay may have spoke to, and it sounds like he may have misspoke, where a statement was made that guns can go off at any point. And what I do want to do is pull that up, and it sounds like he may, because I'm not sure if you all had a chance to see that link. Sister Elaina, Brother Markis, did you all see that?
I saw the original when he first did it.
Okay.
And I just...
Well, yeah, it was, I'm sure, concerned people in firearms training. And with that said, and that was the discussion, ultimately, you do have to be careful in that capacity, especially being in leadership.
Yeah, that's true. But is it to the extent where he should serve 20 years. Let's look at these other militias. They've had their mishaps. And just based on some of the footage I've seen with them, they're not that well trained, and they've done some intentional things. I don't see them being drugged through the mud. I don't see them facing 20 years. The Proud Boys and all the rest of them. So I do understand the safety issue, but again, would it take 2 months if he were a threat? I don't think so. We've seen people gunned down in the streets for way less, way less than that. So it's just shaky, very shaky from what I see. Things just don't add up. From my perspective. From my perspective, the way I see it is politically motivated. And it's a reach. It's a big
I'm glad
reach.
we're having this discussion. I'm going to play the video of when the firearm discharged in the crowd, okay? And because of his capacity and leadership, the person that discharged the firearm, and we get that what Brother Markis was explaining was that from the past situation. So this was the situation when the firearm went off.
Negligent discharge, and ooh, that's not good. That is.
Are you sharing? Are you sharing?
Yes. So you all did not see that. I do apologize for the technical difficulty. Did you all hear anything a second ago?
No.
I do apologize. What I was saying was regarding the discharge of the firearm, and what Brother Markis was saying was that they are basically trying to build up a case. It sounds like they are trying to build up a case of negligence, or it could be beyond that. Because he's a leader in that capacity, even though he didn't previously discharge the firearm, somebody in the group did and made the comment that firearms go off all the time. Now, let's be clear, they do. We've seen the videos. I have seen Shantell's conceal and carry videos where the instructor has shot himself.
But what does it take?
Now, here's the thing about the NRA exams. I used to give exams, right? And I think I'm going to start back giving them because a lot of people, it shows whether they're paying attention or not. There's a question on the test. I think it's a true false. Firearms are mechanical and they do fail. Yes or no? That's a yes answer. They are mechanical and they can fail. Yes. But that goes with the wear and tear and all of these other things. And the manufacturer, you get a weapon sold to you like this, it can blow up when you put certain kind of ammunition in it or the right kind of ammunition. So, but as far as it failing all the time, that's depending on the situation.
So, and again, yes, man makes gun, man is fallible. I'm with you 100%. But the description he gave, or the description that was given, was if you slap an AR-15 hard on the ground, the bolt goes up and the gun fires. That's not true. That's not true. A trigger still has to be pulled for that gun to go off. So I would love to do a test on that, but I know for a fact, nope. I'm not gonna say I know for a fact. I don't even think I have do I have an AR-15 readily available?
I wouldn't recommend trying that.
While you look, let me pull the video up of the demonstration that he gave, because I could hear the click. When he hit the butt of the gun on the ground, you could hear the click. So let me play this real quick, okay? While you look for the gun to do the demonstration. Okay, you all, we are going to play. Okay, so. Oh, wow. Okay, so no, but you heard the click. You saw.
No. What you heard was a bolt closing.
Okay.
A bolt closing does not equal fired shot. So this is the difference. So right now, this is an AR. I don't know if you can see, but it's empty. No magazine. It's an empty gun. Now, I'm going to show you two examples real quick. So, gun, right now, this gun is not on safe. Okay? Watch this. You heard the click, right? That means that the gun fired. So, what he's saying is, when the bolt goes forward, the gun goes off. So
on an older model gun, though, right?
On any AR-15, okay. That's what he's saying. Because the gun he named, now number one, doesn't exist. Number two, a bullpup means that the magazine is not here. The magazine is back here. So it's not that gun he had in his hand is not even a bullpup. So right now, the bolt, let me see if I can do this right. So right now, the bolt is open. Okay? The bolt is open. So what's going to happen? If this closes, I shouldn't be able to pull the trigger. Because remember, pulling the trigger is what sends the round out of the barrel. So watch. This was his test. You heard the sound, right? So did the gun fire? Yes or no? The gun fired? Yes or no?
Well, according
how will we know? You don't.
According to what you said earlier, you said it wouldn't fire if that trigger, piece, right?
If the trigger's not pulled. So now watch
if the
this.
trigger isn't pulled.
Now watch this. Everyone heard the click?
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be a click if when the bolt closed,
If the bolt wasn't forward. But that pushes the boat forward, though. They told us that in the military as well, if you were to slam it on the ground, it's going to push your boat forward, causing a round to extract.
No. It causes a round to load. It doesn't cause it to extract. It causes it to load.
Well, exactly. So, and then after that, the trigger does need to be pulled for it to fire.
So the thing is, so now I'm gonna put the gun on safe. I'm gonna lock the bolt to the rear. So now, if there was a negligence, this shouldn't work because it's on safe. No. Okay.
But again, it comes with the mechanics of the gun and wear and tear. So,
not an AR platform.
Well, if you put it like that, because you did say that you use the AR, okay.
I'm gonna replay it. I want to replay this because this is important, you all. You know, anybody can make a mistake like that, especially with people flocking to purchase weapons right now. And our main concern on Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team is one, justice, and making sure that our people have the proper information and education to make sure that they're safe. One, we don't want to see this brother, Grandmaster Jay, being wrongfully incarcerated for trumped up charges, okay? And that's why we're going through the formalities of this call. By no means are we attorneys. By no means are we trying to give any legal advice. At the same time, there are major issues with regards to that timeline and why it took them so long to charge him with, my goodness, man is facing over 20 years, okay? So I'm going to replay this right now. And we're going to be wrapping up soon. We kind of went over, but I thank you all so much for getting this information out to the community. Okay, so let's listen diligently because he says older rifle and some specifics.
Can't hear.
Yeah, we can't hear him.
Can you send us the link so that we can review later?
Yes, why don't we do it that way? I'll actually post it. I'll post it right now so you all can
Justina, this is Elaina. Before you post the show on Facebook, would you change the ADNC to just ADN by my name?
Well, you'd actually have to do that yourself because you put it in. So it's actually already, everything's already live.
Okay.
It's already, yeah. So when you get a chance, just go ahead and edit that out. But we will get ready and wrap up shortly. The video actually, and bear with me one moment. I'm gonna send you all the link. And Okay, one moment. We're going to go ahead and do this one more time, and I have faith. Here we go. Now, okay. Okay.
They pulled the trigger on them. There were no fingers on the trigger. And anyone who sits up on here talks about, well, they should have had the safety on. Obviously, you ain't never had an old shotgun. This is an XR-15 short. Call it a bullpup. The interesting thing about this weapon is if I pull back the bolt, see that? See the bolt? No bullet in there. Pay very close attention. If I'm not paying attention and I take this weapon and I bang it, look what just happened. The bolt goes forward. The weapon has fired. I didn't touch the trigger. I just simply banged it on the table. If you sit down and you bang this on the ground, you will blow your head off. It happens in basic training every day. Unless you understand weapons for real. And once you listen to these motherfuckers who have no intention of ever picking up one, who don't understand that weapons go off by themselves all the time.
So, I'm glad that we have two awesome perspectives here and two awesome professionals, trained professionals who have been handling weapons for quite some time, okay? Because as Sister Shantell pointed out, what was that NRA question again?
Can guns are mechanical, can they fail? And it's a true false question, and the answer is true. However, he did just demonstrate how Brother Markis just demonstrated it, and neither one of you guys had ammunition. So the theory still has yet to be.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I can prove. Wait a minute. That can still be proven. So, what does it take for a bullet to leave the chamber?
The trigger has to be pulled. It has to be able to be extracted some kind of way. The firing pin has to be ignited.
That's it right there. The firing pin has to hit the cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
So a bolt going forward does not equal shot.
I agree with it being loaded.
Permitted there aren't any mechanical issues, right?
So the mechanical issue with a bolt would result in the firing pin not working correctly.
So that's a mechanical issue, though. That is prevalent, and that could happen.
It is not prevalent. It is not prevalent. It's not. I have been in the I was in the military for 8 years. You know, the only times I ever saw a negligent discharge, it wasn't because the gun dropped. It wasn't because it fell down. We used to have to stack up rifles like teepees.
We did.
We had the bolt open. Sometimes those guns would hit the ground and the bolt was shut. You know how many discharges we had?
None. Fact.
None.
I mean, I agree.
And those were loaded guns. So one of the things he said was, in boot camp, this happens all the time. No, it don't. No, it does not.
Yeah, there ain't too many people blowing their heads off in boot camp. Not accidentally.
So then he said the name of the gun was an XR-15. No, that's an AR-15. And that's actually a basic model.
And it sounds like he may have misspoke a few times on the video.
Right.
It does. People miss. We all do it all the time. You
But
know.
is it enough for him to have to do 20 years? Should you do 20 years for
Are we saying he's getting 20 years because of that video, or 20 years because of his act?
For the 20 years of the charges? What I'm saying is
for pointing the gun.
For pointing the gun.
Pointing a gun.
Or allegedly pointing the gun. But what Brother Markis pointed out was the fact that situations like that video, the people getting shot when someone else's weapon discharged among his group, that has led up to this point 2 months later for them to try to charge him. And it sounds like they're attacking his character ultimately.
Yeah, that's always going to be a question.
Right. And the thing is, and like I said, teaching people about the legal use of force, I think people don't understand that concept. The legal use of force isn't I use my gun and we're talking about this one piece of space right here. It starts here at this one piece of space of the incident, but they're going to look at your whole timeline. If you're on social media and you had a conflict with this person, if you bumped into each other before in the past and you had conflict with this person, when you have a deadly force encounter, you're looking at 4 factors: immediate threat, innocent party, was there lesser force that could have been used, and last but not least, was there any way to retreat? The innocent party aspect of being in a deadly force encounter isn't, were you the innocent party today? Were you the innocent party on Facebook? Were you the innocent party last week when you saw each other in the parking lot? Were you the innocent party when you saw each other at the store? Were you the innocent party when you were childhood friends? They take everything into account. So it's not just the incident. They take everything about your character and they put it in there. So one of your prime examples you have right now, God rest his soul, George Floyd. When it was issued on the news, it was white cop sitting on black man's neck. And that's the way they showed it in the news. What happened months later? You found out that that cop and George Floyd had a history. They had a history together. They worked together. They had problems with each other. It wasn't just this one incident where a white cop kneels on black man's neck. It's this guy has a history with this guy, and there's some serious beef and conflict. So your charges aren't just based on white man kneels on black man's neck. It's, wait a minute, y'all knew each other. Y'all didn't like each other. This wasn't in the line of duty. We can go for a higher charge.
That's interesting. Never knew that.
Mm-hmm. So what happens, and again, I applaud everyone who chimes in on incidents, but when you don't read the full police report and you don't get the full details, we are driven by the media. The media has been telling us how to feel for a very long period of time. And when they make a mistake, they tell you the mistake and go about their business. So for example, there was this court case. Everyone has Netflix pretty much, right? So there was this Netflix movie talking about the Cecil Hotel. This young lady died at the Cecil Hotel, and they blamed a musical artist from Mexico on her death. This man made music that was demonic and evil, and it was like, wait a minute, you're the killer. You're the killer. You're the killer. You did it. You did it. You're the killer. Social media surrounded this guy. Come to find out, he was at the Cecil Hotel 1 year before she was murdered. He lost his career and never came back to the United States since then because he felt that when social media jumped on him, that he couldn't return and do what he wanted to do, and there was never an issue of an apology. So when you look at how things happen now, the court of public opinion is higher than what really happened. So, go ahead. So I don't throw judgment unless I know the particulars of the case, unless I know all details. Why did it take 2 months? I'm assuming building the case. They got to go back and they got to look at everything about this person's character. Everything about the person's character. Yes, people say things out of turn all the time. Yeah, people get a little bit diarrhea of the mouth. But you realize...
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. I have to jump in. Let's talk about that. Number 45 was not impeached a second time, okay?
Thank you.
And the truth of the matter is he has not been charged with facilitating and organizing and coordinating and being in the background of pushing a lot of hate, which fueled their, in theory, the revolution that they had in their mind, okay? So let's have that conversation, not just about the malicious, and I know we have to sign off because we're already an hour and a half into the show. Maybe we need to have a part 2 to this show because we can talk about, we can pull up all the images that we witnessed, and Black America, when the call went out to the activists throughout the cities nationwide, everybody started popping popcorn and said, you are not going to pull us in the middle of this drama that we have nothing to do with, okay?
So let me ask you a question. And again, we have intelligent people, so we can have this intelligent conversation without name calling and everything else, right? Do you agree? Because this young lady is also an attorney, right? Sister Elaina?
No, human rights defender.
Human rights defender. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys a question. True or false? You can only be charged with what you've done and can be proven.
You have circumstantial evidence. You can have circumstantial evidence that can get you charges. Not necessarily.
So I'm gonna try this again.
In there.
I'm gonna try this one more time. Yes or no? Is it true that you can only be charged with what you've done if there's no proof you did it?
No.
So no, right?
No.
So no. No. All right. So let me give you some examples. O.J. Simpson, wonderful case, right? He was considered innocent. But what was the case about? The case was about proving that he did what?
Murdered his wife.
He murdered his wife. Did they prove he murdered his wife?
The case was about he murdered his wife.
Did they prove that he murdered his wife?
No, of course
no,
not.
They didn't.
But they put it in the media.
But wait, did they prove he had something to do with it though?
No.
No, they did not.
No, they didn't.
They didn't.
So,
they did not.
They did not.
I'm gonna tell you like this.
No,
I'm gonna tell you like this. It's a lot of
circumstantial evidence.
So I'm gonna say it like this. There's a lot of footage to go back and review, but I went back and reviewed it years ago. The case was about him murdering his wife. What they proved is that he had something to do with it. The disadvantage is what he was charged with was doing it. He wasn't charged with having something to do with it. So exactly, they proved conspiracy. They didn't prove murder. So what happened with OJ?
But so based on the conspiracy, but they didn't charge him with conspiracy yet. Exactly. They were still able to still come, his family, her family still
civil suit.
Right.
Right. So criminally, you never prove that OJ did it. You prove he conspired to have it done. So he didn't get charged with conspiracy because conspiracy was never on the table. He only got charged with what he did. So there was no charge because he didn't do that.
So it sounds like, Sister Elaina, the community will have to stand behind 100% behind Brother Grandmaster Jay.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a choice.
To hold not only the elected officials accountable, but the judge accountable, and to simply compare the fact that, hey, we had a whole insurgent group take over the capital of the United States of America. And right now, this man is being charged with allegedly pointing a flashlight that was attached to a gun. There's no video footage.
That's right.
You know, the truth of the matter is, with all of the technology, someone should be able to come up with nearby video footage attached to somebody's building or Ring doorbell, depending on where they were located.
Eventually. Because think about it. How long did it take for us to get the Laquan McDonald video?
Well, here we go with that.
So you see what I mean? So the thing is, this is why I say I don't jump to conclusions without knowing all details. Because like one of the things you brought up, the Capitol, what happened at the Capitol, the case was more about, did Trump incite that raid? They tried to say it was based off his remarks of what he said on January 6th.
It's been like you said.
No. What I'm saying is this. They based it on what happened January 6th with his remarks on January 6th. That's where they went wrong. They tried to base it on one incident.
Mm-hmm.
So again, when I tell you that,
and that was very intentional.
Yes, it was.
And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why it wasn't intentional. The reason why it wasn't intentional is because if you look at every impeachment proceeding and every action that's been taken, it was not well thought out. For example, I'm gonna give you another court case.
They're smart, Brother Markis. It's intentional for them to get off.
Sister, let me give you another one. Now, this one might get me kicked. Does everyone remember the Trayvon Martin case?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Now, in your opinion, we're not going to say based on evidence. I'm asking your opinion. What's his name? George Zimmerman. Did George Zimmerman murder Trayvon Martin?
Yes, he did.
Yes.
And that's how you feel, right? So now, let's break it down. On that day, he was on neighborhood watch, right? And was patrolling the neighborhood. He was told not to follow Trayvon Martin, correct?
True.
And it was a lawful order, right?
Yes, it was.
No, it was not. A dispatcher is not a cop. A dispatcher cannot tell you what to do, and it's not a direct order. The problem was that on neighborhood watch, he was what? What was George Zimmerman carrying while on neighborhood watch?
A gun.
George Zimmerman was carrying a gun on neighborhood watch. Your job on neighborhood watch, technically, is to observe and report. So that's all he should have been doing, was observing and reporting. He cornered Trayvon, and the young lady Trayvon was on the phone with, she was loud and belligerent, telling him, you need to get ready to fight. Nothing told him to call the police, run away, do anything. So when he got cornered, he beat up George Zimmerman, which again, as his right to self-defense, he is allowed to defend himself. Trayvon was allowed to defend himself. He was scared. He was in fear for his life. Florida does have stand your ground. So he had every right to stand his ground instead of running. They get into a tussle. Trayvon is winning. Trayvon then grabs his head and bangs it against the ground. Banging someone's head against the ground is now aggravated battery because it's harm with the weapon. The weapon was the ground. He pulled out his firearm and he fired in self-defense. Now, when you look at that, using a firearm in defense of your life or the life of someone else is allowed. But that action should have been manslaughter. It wasn't murder, it was manslaughter. Manslaughter is simply you died accidentally or was hurt accidentally with an intentional action. His intent was to stop the threat. What happened? He stopped the threat, but the person died. That's manslaughter. That's manslaughter. When that court went the case, when that case went to court, he was charged with second-degree murder, and manslaughter was a secondary charge that was later explained. So when they went through that case, they tried I think it was like a month or two for the case, right? The court case was like a month or two.
It was a while ago.
It was no.
This was a while ago.
It took a month, right? It took a month or 2 months.
And
But hold up. So for that time period of that court case, they tried to prove that George Zimmerman was a murderer. They didn't prove he was a murderer. They proved he was an idiot. They proved he was a fool. They proved he was an idiot. When
But
the
again,
judge,
just like, yeah, and that, but just for the sake of time, but again, when they bring these charges, these folks are very strategic. They're smart.
very strategic.
but Justina, Sister Justina, I'm telling you like this. When they came and talked to the jury, the judge explained what manslaughter was to the jury using lawyer terms. The jury deliberated and came back and said, "Can you explain that again? We didn't understand what you said." So the judge explained it again using lawyer terms. So they didn't understand it the first time. You really didn't get it the second time because I didn't change the way I explained it. You came back and said the evidence said it was clean.
So again, very intentional.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Along that same time, there was a young lady who fired warning shots. Do you
And a
remember
warning
that?
shot is illegal.
Yeah, but she went to jail.
But do you know that now again? Do you know that whole
Her
case?
boyfriend, and I believe it was in Florida
It
along
was in
that time.
Florida. It was
It was
in Florida.
And
But
I don't remember the specifics, but this young lady, her boyfriend was very abusive. He had beat her up, and she fired warning shots. She had just had a baby, and she went to jail, and she did a very long stint in jail for you. And they tried to use the stand your ground rule for her as well. What I want to emphasize is there's a double standard.
no,
When it comes to African descendants here in the United States, yes, it is.
not for
Because
that case.
if that was, but wait a minute, if that was Trayvon Martin who had shot George Zimmerman ends up dead. He wouldn't have gotten off. I'm sorry, it wouldn't have happened.
First one calls the cops is the
race
victim.
plays an issue, just like race is playing an issue right now in Grandmaster Jay's case. I mean, that's my position. I haven't seen, anything that could change my mind. I don't think anybody should get 20 years for not perfecting gun safety. or holding somebody accountable because other members of their militia got shot. I'm sure the Proud Boys wouldn't be going through any of these things. I mean, they've done a lot, a whole lot worse. So, and it's not that I'm trying to direct attention away from some of the things that you're bringing up. But what I'm saying here is that clearly there's a double standard. I mean, if he posed a threat, and I'm sticking with that, if he did indeed pose a threat that day, why not arrest him that day?
Unmute. Justina, you're muted.
I think we should do a follow-up call because this is a very important topic and a lot of people are purchasing guns right now. There are so many gray areas that the public who has not been trained, and like you said, you take one conceal and carry class and you're out there with the firearm and you haven't done the tactical training that professionals have had. So it's important that we still have this ongoing conversation. It's important that we support Brother Grandmaster Jay. The brother may have misspoke. Whatever the case is, as we continue to have the dialogue to educate the community on gun safety and the proper way to carry a gun, I pray that the video footage, if there is any, can prove. We don't know if they have cameras in Louisville on any of the nearby stoplights, or they have them all
I
over
was
Chicago.
actually just in Louisville about 3 weeks ago, and I didn't see anything. I was literally driving around there and I was there for military training. So outside of the military base, obviously we're going to see the state. So I didn't see anything. And I always try to compare what do they have in other states that I have in my hometown, and I didn't see any like local cameras or any other like street poles.
Yeah, this is probably going to be an interesting case. And again, it's a matter of the people advocating and rallying and lobbying behind Brother Grandmaster Jay, because again, it can happen to anyone. And we're getting ready to wrap up, but just recall Brother Philando Castile, who told the police officer he had a gun and still was shot to death in his vehicle.
It's no excuse, Justina, for the way that we're treated in the just us system. I mean, I have these conversations all the time, and I generally lose my patience when we try to justify some of the nasty things that happen to us. To think that a person should do 20 years sit behind bars in a box for 20 years for misspeaking or because someone may not agree with his politics, I take issue with that. And even for the negligent discharge that happened in Kentucky, or that would have happened at any other formation. I mean, those type of things do happen, especially with people who are new gun owners. Not in every state you have to take classes. I know in the state of Georgia, I didn't have to take a class, but I did go and get trained. So there's a lot of factors that go into this. So should he be held accountable because some of his members had a negligent discharge? No. And specifically not when you're signing waivers. Once you join, we do have some type of accountability as becoming a member of NFAC. You are accountable for your weapon. You're accountable for your training. So, I just don't see 20 years.
So I'm wondering if at this point, and we're going to get ready and wrap up real quick. I just want to throw this question out there to you all. I'm wondering if at this point, if it's a matter of, sounds like it's their word against their word. The group of 5 to 8 that were walking and the group that was on top of the roof.
Yeah, it's mostly a case of
His
hearsay.
word against his word right now. Where is the proof ultimately? There is no video. We haven't seen any video footage.
We, as in the community,
The
hasn't seen
public
video footage.
hasn't seen any video footage yet. Exactly.
But again, I'm not saying it's justifiable to give him 20 years because he was silly on one video. I don't think anyone should ever get 20 years because they made a mistake. Unless it
First,
took
they have to prove, let's be clear. First, they have to prove that he pointed a flashlight attached to a gun at them on the roof. Right. And again, it becomes a matter of if there's no video, it's a matter of the folks on the roof, their word versus the folks who were on the ground and their word.
But, and I do have to ask because I don't know, who is his attorney?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Because
and again, I personally don't speak on the criminal aspect.
Everything's been very tight-lipped, because of the situation.
So generally on a public forum, I don't even speak on the criminal aspect or the domestic aspect. I speak from an international aspect and a political aspect because I believe it's politically motivated. Because of the things that he's uncovered with the United States complicity in state-sponsored terrorism. And with that, I yield the floor.
Right. So real quick, and I know I keep saying we're going to wrap up, what Sister Elaina is referencing is the recent United Nations hearings that occurred, okay? And those hearings occurred from mid to late January through the first week of February. And I'm going to actually pull this up real quick because it was very important. Basically, the United Nations, the International Commission of Inquiry on Systemic Racist Police Violence, and I'm going to share this real quick and then we really are going to wrap up. And we can go on social media and pull this information down. So Chicago actually hosted the United Nations in 2016, okay? And we hosted them at Chicago State with the for the working group on people of African descent and the decade of celebrating people of African descent. Now, the Human Rights Council in June 2020 condemned the racially discriminatory and violent practices perpetrated by the law enforcement agencies in the United States against African Americans and people of African descent. So what the National Conference of Black Lawyers and the National Lawyers Guild, along with the International Commission of Inquiry with the United Nations, they held hearings for the commission from January 18th through February 6, 2021. The final report will be due out soon if it hasn't already been issued. But the last time that they held these kinds of hearings, ultimately the United States was sanctioned, and the recommendation was given for the United States to be sanctioned for the crimes against their own people, human rights violations. And that's where Sister Elaina, as we wrap up, can give us a brief 1-minute overview of the human rights violations on the people in the United States, people of African descent, by law enforcement, and the work that you do as a human rights defender.
Well, the violence, and I term the police brutality is external violence. Is structural, and the United States is complicit. As a matter of fact, the federal government, the police always get off. They always have different circumstances where they can get off. It's always justified. And the victim is always dehumanized, specifically in the
Well, let's
media.
specifically speak to the work. No, but I really want you to speak specifically to the work as a human rights defender within the United Nations.
Well, as a human rights defender on our behalf, the work that I'm doing is filing different communications, defining the issues, our human rights, the violations that we suffer in international terms, using the international perspective, because we have a larger gamut of rights that we can assert to combat some of these things. Like I said, if you want to get rid of police brutality, then we should have our own policing. We should be controlling our own areas. We should be governing ourselves. That's where we're going to have to move forward to doing. So that's what most of my work is based on: nation building, asserting these collective rights so we can control our spaces, control our human capital, control our wealth, and transfer that authority to ourselves.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we are getting ready to wrap up. Sister Shantell Lumpkins. Well, number one, everyone, please be sure to go to change.org and sign the petition regarding the case against Brother John Fitzgerald, also known as Grandmaster Jay. And I'll post, actually, I believe I posted the link. I'll post the link again. Sister Shantell, can you tell people how to reach you?
You guys can reach me on Facebook, my first and last name, Shantell Lumpkins. I am also my security company, Above All Security Solutions, LLC, on Facebook as well.
Brother Markis Miranda?
Yes, ma'am. I'm on Facebook, P6 Firearms Training, as well as my first and last name is my personal page. I barely do anything on Instagram, so just pretty much stick with Facebook.
Thank you, Sister Elaina. We are wrapping up. How can people reach anyone at the NFAC should they need help, if they want to learn more information about the organization?
I don't have the website right now, but I'll once I get my hands on it.
Facebook, actually, on Facebook, it would be
Facebook.
NFAC Louisville. Okay, so you all have that information, and make sure that you go to change.org. The link is posted to sign the petition regarding Brother John Fitzgerald Johnson and the situation that occurred with the pointing of the firearm, alleged pointing of a firearm based on a flashlight. So we will see how that unfolds. Pray that the community stands behind this brother and that we get the information out to everyone. God bless you all and have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for joining us on Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team. Good night. God bless you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.